Thanks, Chip. Good afternoon. I call to order the July 5th, 2023 Committee of the Whole for Planning and Public Works. Here in the chambers, we have Councilmember Carson and myself, Councilmember Stewart, and online we have Councilmembers Fields, Kritzer, and Anderson. We do have 8 agenda items today, as we have removed item number 9 to be rescheduled at a later date. The first item on the agenda tonight is the updated Lodging Tax Advisory Committee budget recommendations. And with us, we have a whole crew of wonderful folks, including Deputy Director Allen, to kick us off.
Thank you. Hello, Council. This agenda item will be presented by Jackie Laylor, our Economic Development and Tourism Program Administrator. As a reminder, in 2005, the City Council approved specific percentage distributions of the lodging tax fund. In April, the LTAC brought 3 budgeting process recommendations to the Council intended to go into effect for the 2025-2026 budget cycle. The original recommendations included 1, no longer budgeting by percentages, 2, putting guidance in place regarding the end fund reserve with a minimum cash balance of 100% of annual revenues, and 3, requesting a review of the alternative funding sources outside of the current lodging tax designation of 39% for city signature events and cultural arts programming. I will now turn it over to Jackie to provide an update on these recommendations from the LTAC committee.
Thank you and good afternoon. Staff received valuable feedback from Council in April to take back to the LTAC, which included the following. A general support of removing the budgeting percentages, but there was some hesitancy expressed around removing designated funding for signature events and cultural arts programming. This funding in recent years has been approximately $150,000 annually. The Council also shared a general support of an in-fund reserve policy, but a couple members felt that maintaining 100% of annual revenues in the reserve fund was too high. In addition, the Council also asked what could be done now to support the tourism industry and hotels that are still recovering. At the June 6th LTAC meeting, the committee chose... At the June 6th LTAC meeting, the committee chose to focus on the end fund reserve feedback, and they unanimously passed 2 updated recommendations related to the end fund reserve, which included an immediate spending opportunity for some of the surplus dollars. The LTAC based these new recommendations on feedback from the Council and the city's finance department. The updated target end fund reserve percentage falls in line with the city's finance department recommendation to staff and is still within the acceptable range of neighboring cities that manage lodging tax reserve funds. The updated recommendations are as follows. Recommendation 1, the LTAC unanimously recommends maintaining a target end fund reserve of 60% of projected budget revenues. The LTAC may recommend to the Council at any time a funding plan above the 60% threshold to adequately invest in identified large spending opportunities. Recommendation 2, the LTAC unanimously recommends allocating up to $80,000 to support a tourism strategic plan. The LTAC discussed the immediate need for a tourism strategic plan to help inform the 25-26 budgeting process, which included coordinating a lodging tax fund with a newly established tourism promotion area, funding and work plan, identifying the best investment opportunities for additional surplus funds above the 60% threshold should that policy be approved, and working with Parks and Recreation staff to evaluate opportunities to increase tourism results for signature events and cultural arts programming. If approved, staff can immediately go out to RFP and have a tourism strategic plan to present to the Council in early 2024 to better inform the next budget cycle recommendations. The LTAC will further evaluate the 39% designation of funds for signature events and cultural arts programming in the next committee meetings. They plan to invite Parks and Recreation staff to attend and further discuss the concerns around removing the designation of funds. Additionally, as stated, the Tourism Strategic Plan process will partner with city events and cultural arts staff to evaluate opportunities to increase tourism results. We would like direction today from the council on proceeding to the July 18th consent agenda with these two updated recommendations. At this time, are there questions or comments?
Thank you so much. As a courtesy to our council member who actually serves on the LTAC, I wanted to kick it off to give Councilmember Fields the opportunity to open the council discussion if he would like.
Thank you, Councilmember Stewart. Appreciate that. I am in tremendous support of the LTAC recommendations, and I think it was wise to propose the strategic plan and include evaluations of how LTAC funding can support signature events in the future. One of the strongest arguments I can make for the need for a strategic plan is in my attendance of the meetings. It's amazing energy and brainstorming and a whole lot of ideas on how to make a healthier Redmond, a healthier tourism industry. And that alone tells anyone who's paying attention to that kind of creativity is that the best thing to do is put that in a disciplined strategic plan so that we can actually take those ideas and harvest the brain trusts of those amazing people and put it in something that provides very clear direction for the city.
Thank you.
That's it.
Other comments from the council? Councilmember Kritzer.
Thank you. And thank you to Councilmember Fields for serving on this committee and bringing some council perspective to those conversations. Really appreciate the LTAC's work and response to the feedback that we gave. And I think these two recommendations are great for us to move forward with. In particular, I'm excited about the idea of the tourism strategic plan because I feel like it gets at what we were discussing last time, which was let's first identify the problem we're trying to solve and then figure out what are the various solutions and not jump to this issue around, honing in on city signature events. I guess my only question for you is that you mentioned that the LTAC will be taking up that question at their next meeting. In my opinion, I'd be very happy to advance these recommendations and see how the tourism strategic plan shapes up and then look back at that question around the budgeting and the city signature events once we have a little bit more of a view on kind of the holistic landscape of what we're thinking about. Because I would say in terms of your characterization at the top of this meeting of our last discussion, I would say I was not at the time open to that change in terms of taking any of the funding away from signature events and therefore was not yet open to the idea of shifting the funding model at the moment until we change that. So that would be at least my opinion. I don't know if you would categorize that the council as a whole was positive about it, but anyway, I appreciate the thinking on the feedback and just was wondering whether it just might be possible for us to delay the conversation on the second piece of this until we have the chance to think through the plan.
Thank you for those comments. And you are correct. I actually think the reason why we're asking for this to go on consent is so that we can quickly get out requests for proposals to get a consultant on board so that we can actually use it to the tourism strategic plan to inform the budgeting process. So I do actually, maybe you can follow up on what the committee will be addressing specifically, because I thought that was also going to wait until we had the strategic plan due to what you just raised.
Parks has offered, the staff that put on events has offered to come speak with the LTAC to talk about how we can partner better now. And so that was part of it as well as taking up that question, but you are correct. We can take that up and push it down the road a little bit, certainly as we have this to help inform. I think that's a really great recommendation. So thank you.
Yeah, I think just to put a finer point on that, so we had heard from park staff that they'd be interested in continuing to educate the LTAC about what they do, and then the LTAC to educate park staff what they're looking for. And so actually from your request from the last meeting, you had asked there to be greater collaboration. So I think it's more that than finalizing a budget recommendation. That will happen more in the late January, February period.
That's fantastic, and really appreciate that. And I think it's great for parks to be having that conversation now, and because I think part of what we might actually uncover as part of the tourism strategic plan, if we actually look into overall all the different types of events and the different types of things we do in our city, is what contributes to bringing people to Redmond, and how do we quantify the impact, for example, of our city signature events that, well, you know, an individual event where you might categorize the exact heads and beds, and it's a little hard, as I think we've heard from some folks, because there are other events that go on the same weekend or other types of things. But what makes a city an attractive place to visit? And, you know, I think some of those events are critical. So we'll probably be able to uncover that as part of that plan, and looking forward to that work.
Great. Other comments from the council? Councilmember Carson.
Thank you. Excuse me. So I've been chair of the LTAC multiple times, and it is, as Mr. Fields indicated, the knowledge is really with those 6 people and obviously a council chair that is charged with overseeing what we do with the funds, kind of the direction we go in, and more importantly, they know the needs of the community in terms of I would say needs and opportunities within the community. And so one of the things that I'm a little concerned about, obviously, you know, if you don't have someone on staff that is able to do the work with the budget we have, then, you know, finding a consultant that, or I should say the bandwidth to do that work, it seems to me that that's definitely needed. But what I would try to underscore is that the real knowledge is with the people on the commission. And so it's teasing that, you know, for a consultant to tease that out of them and get, and also staff when we're talking about, you know, the signature events, because I do think that we, you know, we're kind of in this stage where I think we want to kind of see them evolve, and but how do we make that happen? How do we, or how do we make them more attractive so that they are a better fit for the funds that come from the LTAC, which I think is kind of what you're trying to keep in mind is, you know, how do we sharpen the point on Derby Days or Redmond Lights? And I think Redmond Lights has a particularly interesting real potential to do, you know, heads and beds from around the region. So, you know, to me, I think that's what you're trying to get at, is this idea. So I don't know that the amount is the right amount. All I know is that if you need someone that's going to put this together, you know, finding the right consultant, I think, is super important. And I don't know people in this particular space, but there are a number of good strategic planning firms that's what they do. So I hope we do keep in mind the signature events, but that isn't the primary goal. So kind of like what Councilmember Kritzer was saying, that it's, you know, we kind of keep in the back of our mind, but it's, you know, let the plan become the plan, and then we figure out what the signature events need to do to kind of adapt to that plan. So I'm supportive. Don't know what the right number is, but if that's, you know, we'll have to go. So I don't know exactly what that 80,000 buys us. So I'd be interested to hear more about that.
It's up to 80,000, and that's was budgeted and recommended based on kind of market rate, and the scope can probably scale one way or the other dependent on the need that's presented and the responses we get.
Yeah, and the other thing I'll just say is that hard-earned knowledge of the many years on the committee is reflective in your comments, because that was a very similar conversation to what happened that you were just raising. And particularly, I also want to make clear that we have staffing through 2024. So this is why we started this process early, so that we're planning for 25, 26. So we bought ourselves a year of planning, which is good.
Yeah. I guess what I was trying to say is that the consultant is super important because it's really getting that knowledge out of the committee that is, I think, the hardest part and the most important part. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Councilmember Fields, then Councilmember Kritzer, and then ask if we have no objections to this item going to consent. Councilmember Fields.
Thank you. And I completely agree with Councilmember Carson. I would also, even though we built in time, I think there is a sense of urgency here because there is work to be done and then a budget to be prepared, decisions to be made. So I would hate to see a delay here. The one thing I would want to add, and it's a little bit from a whole different perspective, is I had a chance to go to the Taste of Puyallup over the weekend, and I was really impressed with the diversity of the audience, the diversity of the music, and the diversity of the way everybody interacted. It was pretty remarkable. So I think one of the things Redmond, and I've mentioned this before, and I'll mention it again and get in trouble all over again. I have friends from different communities that have a perception that Redmond is not a place to go. They don't want to bring, their daughters or family here because they see it as not necessarily inviting. I think we need to stand up and sort of really show the world that, we're open to things other than what we've been doing for the past 50, 60, 70 years and create a much more exciting and vibrant entertainment events. So I think the consultant might want to talk with our DEI manager as well. So it's just a thought.
Thank you. Councilmember Kritzer.
Thank you. I just wanted to add, I think Councilmember Carson is spot on around the purpose of this, and I do hope that it will really draw out the recommendations from our hotel industry or hospitality industry on really what we can do to help support them and like what is the most impactful. And I think to Councilmember Fields' point, are there any new things we could do that would be drawing people in? I wanted to point out, I think One Redmond Foundation has done a lot of kind of thinking on this and trying to create some events that draw people in, and it would be great to engage them as a stakeholder in that tourism and promotion work. Although I will recognize that I think some of the events that the LTAC already funds really do highlight some of the incredible diversity of our city, especially just went to the Vegetarian Festival the other week, and that was amazing. And I know and Ananda Mela will be coming up later this month, and we have lots of different events that it highlights that I just think it's really cool to already see what the impact the LTAC makes in terms of draws, but trying to figure out if there's something that would really make people want to visit Redmond even more is great to look at.
Wonderful. So hearing no objection, we'll see this item on consent on the 18th. Great. Thank you all so much. Item number 2 on our agenda is approval of a contract with Community Attributes Incorporated in the amount of $80,850 for an economic development strategic plan. And we are again joined by Deputy Director Marsh and our Economic Development Manager, Philly Marsh.
Hello again. This agenda item will be presented by Philly Marsh, our Economic Development Manager, who has also been the project lead for this. Today, we are seeking Council's direction to put the Economic Development Strategic Plan contract for approval on the July 18th consent agenda, and I'll turn it over to Philly to provide a little more information.
Okay.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Council. Today, we're asking Council support to move a contract forward to the July 18th consent agenda. The contract is with Community Attributes, Inc. for $80,850 to develop Redmond's Economic Development Strategic Plan. Funding for this plan was authorized in the 2023-2024 budget. We came to Council on May 2nd with the scope of the ED Plan Consultant RFP. We heard valuable council feedback that was incorporated into the consultant's solicitation and evaluation. We had 12 firms respond to our Economic Development Strategic Plan RFP, and a cross-departmental selection committee of 10 staff helped review and select 3 finalists to be interviewed. Subset of that selection committee conducted interviews, and there was unanimous recommendation to move forward with Community Attributes. Community Attributes is a firm with roots in the region that now houses 3 offices nationwide. They scored high based on their regional and national experience, their approach to equity and inclusion, strong data analysis expertise, approach to stakeholder engagement, and approach to client collaboration and presentation of final deliverables. As soon as the contract is approved, we will get started on background research and data analysis, and this is anticipated to be a 9-month project timeline. And again, today we are seeking council support to move this contract for approval on the July 18th consent agenda.
Wonderful, thank you, and congratulations on garnering 12 proposals. Very well done. Are there questions from the council? Councilmember Carson.
I just had a quick one. So this firm we've done business with before, the city has. Do you recall which strategic plans they have worked on, or which plans?
Economic strategic plans, or just work with the city of Redmond?
Worked with the city.
I think they're currently under contract to do some planning work. They do have multiple subsections of their firm.
Sure.
I think that's the only current one for the city of Redmond that I'm aware of. They have done regional, which is one of their strengths, is because they're familiar with the regional context as well as some city programs, but then can also bring in that national perspective on best practices.
They've done a number of.
They have, and I
plans
can't
for
I
us.
know there is one specifically with Redmond 2050, but we have so many contracts with Redmond 2050. I can't remember the exact one, but I can find out for you.
I mean, if you wanted to send the council which ones they've worked on. I know they've done work for us, and it's just, you can't remember every consultant but they're tried and true. Was that part of the?
When we had the discussion, we talked about how are they working now with our current contract, and I remember Jeff speaking. I can't remember again which one it was, but he was saying that was a part of the discussion is the other contracts they've done or are doing with us right now.
Okay, great, thanks.
Other comments from the council, questions? Great. Well, I think given the previous conversation on this topic, there's a lot of excitement. Thank you so much. We will see this on consent on the 18th. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Item number 3 on our agenda tonight is approval of the 2023-2024 annual ORCA contract renewal. In addition to Deputy Director Allen, we are inviting Linnea Taylor and Vanjie Garcia to the table. Thanks for joining us.
Hello again. Linnea Taylor, the city's program administrator from Traffic Demand Management, also known as TDM, will be presenting the 2023-2024 ORCA contract renewal agreement between the City of Redmond and King County Metro. This agreement has been in place since 2009 when ORCA first started. This program supports the city as an employer in complying with requirements of the Washington State Commute Trip Reduction Law and the city's transportation management program requirements, as well as setting an example within and for the businesses in this community. Linnea, you want to take it away?
Sure. So yes, I'm here today to discuss the city's ORCA contract renewal for 2023-2024, and this covers all employee transit and van pool rides for any work-related activities. There are no significant changes to the contract this go-around. We're still using the pay-as-you-go model that they started in 2020. By they, I mean King County Metro. So far this year, we have accrued $8,418 in invoices, which is double from last year, and this is due to increased transit ridership, as well as the city forming its first van pool in Q4 of last year. So renewal of this contract would ensure a transportation benefit to employees commuting to work, as well as keeping us compliant with commute trip reduction laws and the city's transportation management program requirements, as Seraphy stated earlier. The total cost for this contract isn't anticipated to exceed $20,000, and this contract renewal was included in the adopted budget for the Commuter Assistance Office. And so I'm looking for approval to take this item to consent on July 18th.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Are there questions from the council? Ms. Kritzer?
Just a question on the history of the pay-as-you-go model shift. Did we shift to choosing the pay-as-you-go model, or is that the only option that is available?
It's the only option. It started in COVID. So they used to do forecasting. So previous to this, like in 2019, I was looking in our contract was about $31,000 as opposed to this last year, $4,000 for actual ridership, just because everything, tanked and not, they weren't charging for transit for a while in 2020. So the pay-as-you-go model was something that they adjusted to the climate. And it sounds like they're keeping it as far as I know.
Great. Well, you anticipated my question, which was how it compared to previous times. So that's great to hear, and I'm supportive of this.
Thank you. Are there other questions from the council? Any objection to this item going to consent on the 18th? Hearing none, I think we'll see this one back. Thank you so much. And thank you, Deputy Director Allen. You're off the hook now, and we'll transition over to some public works stuff. Yeah, thanks for joining us. Item number 4 on our agenda tonight is approval of a final contract with CDK Construction Services Incorporated, accept construction for Fire Station 16 and maintenance building seismic upgrade project, and request additional funding. Welcome, Director Byrd.
Good afternoon. Sorry, just had to make sure my mic's on. Hope everyone's doing well. Excuse me. We did a seismic upgrade project to Fire Station 16, which fortunately for us, we were able to gain some FEMA dollars, grant for that. Project came in just over $3 million, but part of this process, because of what you can and cannot charge to FEMA grants, we're seeking an additional about $100,000 from council to cover some overhead, some staff costs, and some minor construction costs to close that gap across the board. What this project did for us, though, it provided some seismic upgrades to Station 16, essentially bolting the frame of the building to the foundation, which is always good, so it doesn't slide off. And it also added some operational improvements in terms of high velocity, high speed access doors for the fire trucks to get in and out of the facility. Other than that, it was a successful project across the board, and as we're looking at these types of projects going forward with our fire stations, we're definitely going to attempt to leverage additional FEMA dollars in the future.
Thank you. Are there questions from the council? Councilmember Kritzer?
Overall, very excited about this project. Very important to have our fire stations able to function, especially in the case of an earthquake. Just curious in terms of that gap funding that's being requested, what part of the budget is that being proposed, or what funds are we proposing to use to take that?
So we have some fund balance in CIP that was unallocated out of last year that we're using to cover those dollars.
Great. Yep. I'm in support. Thanks.
Other questions or comments from the council? Wonderful. So it looks like we'll see this one, if there's no objection, excuse me, then we will see this one on consent on the 18th.
Correct.
Thank you. Moving on then to item number 5, approve a contract amendment to the comprehensive garbage, recyclables, and organics collection contract.
Yes, we have Micah, all things garbage, here for us today.
Yeah, as you stated, we're here talking about an amendment to the comprehensive garbage, recyclables, and organics collection contract. We're looking for it to be on consent on July 18th. As you heard at the June 13th study session with King County, talking about the RePlus program being the reason for a rate restructure, the King County Council passed their rate restructure through their council last year. And they gave cities, they extended it by a year from the original implementation date of January 1st, 2023. And that gave cities time to work with their haulers to create these contract amendments. And so we've been negotiating with Waste Management for the past 12 months or so to get to where we are today with this draft amendment. And so this will change the disposal portion of our rate. And so as a reminder, our rates are broken up into two separate portions. There's the service portion, which is the negotiated contract between Waste Management and the city. That's the cost for their services. And there's the disposal portion, which up until this point has just been a pass-through of the King County tip fee. And then King County is changing their rate from that straight tip fee to a fixed account charge, which will be allocated to each city based on their previous tonnage. And that'll make up about 20% of the rate, and then 80% of the rate will be the tip fee. So to keep this revenue neutral, as they stated at their presentation, they've lowered their tip fee and then added this fixed account charge to get to about the same total revenue that they were at before. Let's see. If approved, this amendment will create a method for Waste Management to bill our customers for this fixed account charge, which in our current contract we didn't have. And so if we didn't approve this, we wouldn't be able to collect this money and pass it on to the county through the hauler, because the hauler in our contract is the billing agent for us. All the Waste Management billed cities are likely to use this same contract draft. This is the first city that works with Waste Management that is going to be passing this. In these negotiations, we worked with Auburn, Federal Way, and Newcastle to create this kind of draft amendment to the contracts. Most of the contracts are fairly similar. There are some differences that they'll probably have in their amendments. But overall, it's the same method that we're going to use moving forward with these Waste Management cities. So this amendment only addresses the rate restructure. There's no service changes. There's no other changes to the contract. It's specifically to allow the hauler to bill customers for this fixed account charge. The bills for residents won't even change, because currently that service line and disposal line are combined and then put on the bill as a single rate. So it'll still show up as a single rate on the customer's bill. The amendment, timing-wise, needs to be approved by September 1st in order to apply the rates that will start January 1st, 2024 at the county. With that, I think that's it. So like I said, we're seeking consent agenda for July 18th.
Great, thank you so much. Are there questions from the council? Mr. Fields.
Thank you. So based on what you said, the vast majority of customers, well, it'll be an invisible change to them. They won't even notice, a change on their billing. Are there any customers who would not be aware of this change who would then be hit with an increase that they will be surprised by? Are there any haulers or any people in this garbage chain that doesn't know this is coming and would like to know this is coming?
This coincides with the annual rate increase that is built into our contract already. And so January 1st, customers will see a rate increase. There will be notification that'll go out 45 days prior about that rate increase, and we can include in that information on the rate. King County is supposed to be working on outreach for rolling out this rate restructure. And so we'll be working with them closely to make sure that we're across the county talking the same way about this change in the rate structure. I don't know how the other haulers are addressing it because I only worked with Waste Management on this. So I think they're using a similar method, but I'm not totally sure.
Okay, and I appreciate that part of the question of the notification. Are there any, if you do the math, are there any significant increases for anyone in this restructuring of the rates?
No, the restructure itself doesn't cause any increase in the rates for any of the customers.
Got it. All right, thank you.
I'll go ahead and hop in with a couple of questions. Micah, could you remind us how often and how the fixed charge will be evaluated? Because of course, the first time it's set, it's based on our prior tonnage, but all of our cities, hopefully all of them, but ours definitely, has a waste reduction program in place. How often is that rate gonna be reevaluated? And is it gonna be reevaluated the same way against actual tonnage?
Yeah, it'll be evaluated by the county annually, and we'll find out in September every year as we work on our CPI increase. We'll be able to incorporate their new fixed account charge. And you're absolutely right. It provides an incentive for cities to try and reduce the amount of waste that they're putting into the system as a percentage of the total county whole. So cities that do a better job will see lower rates in the future as part of this process.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Other questions from the council? I think we're good to go for consent on this one. Thank you so much. We'll see this back on the 18th.
Great, thank you very much.
Item number 6 on our agenda is to approve on-call cultural resources and archaeological management service agreements. And we are back with Director Burt.
Yes, thank you. So we have to have on-call archaeological resources available due to the fact that at times we dig or operate in sensitive areas that may have archaeological sensitivity or history. And so these resources, when we are beginning to undertake a project in that area, we call them out, they come out and they do that assessment for us. If any artifacts are ever found, they're the ones that help us classify and determine what we do with those items found on site as well. And it is a requirement in these identified areas to have such an assessment done before we can continue with the construction project. So these two firms are some of the best in the Northwest, and they were put out for an RFQ. They came back in, and we're looking to have 2 contracts in place, each contract for up to $150,000 over a 2-year period with optional extension years. We don't charge against these projects unless these services are needed, and these types of projects were identified in the 23-24 project, 23-24 budget.
Thank you. Questions from the council? Councilmember Kritzer.
I'd just say that I'm glad that we're thinking ahead on this. Obviously, it hasn't been that long since we had approved our cultural resources management plan, and glad to have that in place. I was able to attend the dedication and opening of our new house pole next to next to Evans Creek and or Bear Creek, and it was a great ceremony and really great to be able to hear about how important it is for us to be able to do this work thoughtfully in collaboration, especially with local tribes when we uncover these different issues. And so I think it's really great to be able to have this contract. So I'm in support.
Yeah, that's great to hear. The city's definitely learned some lessons over the years on this, but it's critical to have it in place for sure.
So every once in a while in this job, you have one of those humbling moments where your colleague identifies a new plan that you've never heard of. So I'll be reading that one. That looks like it was approved in 2019 later today. My question was, have we worked with these firms before in management of our resources?
I'm not for sure, but I'll check and
Just curious.
let you know.
Yeah, okay. Other questions from the council?
I will say that normally a firm like this is somewhat niche, and so if they've been around, we've probably worked with them one way or the other.
It's kind of the angle that, of curiosity I had also. Are there other questions from the council? They're all quietly reading the Cultural Resources Management Plan from 2019. No, I kid. Are there any objections to this item going to consent on July 18th? Okay, I think we'll see this one back.
Great.
Thank you so much. Item number 7 is approval of the Redmond Technology Station PED Bike Bridge Operations and Maintenance Agreement with Microsoft.
Yes, I'm going to have Chris Stinger, our Deputy Director for Maintenance and Operations, talk about this one.
Good evening, council, leadership, and staff. On the call with us is Mike Paul, who was shepherding the project from start to finish and helped out with this wonderful document that I present before you, which is the Redmond Technology Station Pedestrian and Bicycle Bridge Operation and Maintenance Agreement between the City of Redmond and Microsoft. So I won't go into the nitty-gritty details of this, but of all the agreements that I looked at, this is a pretty fair and balanced agreement. If you go through there, the appendixes, Exhibit A talks about the easements and shows you the maps on there. Exhibit B has the city responsibilities as well as Microsoft responsibilities when it comes to maintenance actions, and then the funding of that, which is very there's 2 spots that are split down the middle there where it's the deck surfaces where the city and Microsoft will co-fund that, and the snow and ice removal. Other than that, Redmond's operations side will take care of the hardscape, the landscaping, graffiti removal, the capital side of the girders and all the equipment on the bridge there. Microsoft will fund our operations when it comes to the landscaping and graffiti removal. Now, there is 5 areas of responsibility that Microsoft will take care of, and that is the east and west accesses to the bridge. They'll take care of the garbage, and they will take care of their signage. There's some Microsoft-specific signage, and then the city will take care of the city signage. Other than that, Exhibit Charlie discusses the levels of service that are expected with this. And then one thing, when you drive under that bridge, you'll see the canopy, and the replacement repair that will be funded by Microsoft. It's a proprietary fabric tech, it's called, so they have the direct line to that company. And our responsibility will just be to call it in if there was a major tear in there. Other than that, pending any further questions for myself or Mike, that concludes this, and would love to have this on consent for July 18th.
We'll point out a couple things, so unique partnership agreement to build this bridge between the state, Microsoft, City of Redmond. The east and west landings are within the Microsoft campus, so they are retaining basically full ownership of those 2 landings where the bridges connect. Center portion is us through the state of Washington. That's why Microsoft will be responsible for garbage and maintenance on the 2 east and west landing. There won't be any garbage cans on the bridge unto itself. The other thing that we'll be working through is within this agreement, it talks about reimbursement, but we have to start maintaining the bridge over the first year or 2 to get an understanding of what our costs are going to be, and then that's what we'll be billing Microsoft. We don't have a blank check, obviously, but we will be working out those levels of service to meet the obligations within the agreement.
Thank you. Questions from the council? Councilmember Carson.
So since we don't know what this is going to cost to maintain with absolute certainty, what kind of budget number are we going to be looking at for maybe the first budget? Or will we know that number, well, have some idea
Yeah.
to be able to budget.
So the cost right now for maintenance, considering that we'll probably assume the bridge sometime in first or second quarter of 2024, after Microsoft finishes construction of the west landing. The initial calculations figures maybe about a half to 3/4 of an FTE worth of time for inspections, cleanup, assessments, things along those lines. Right now, we have that within our maintenance and operations budget, but any time going forward that we assume some of these costs, then we'll be putting that into Microsoft for reimbursement. So we can cover it as is right now without a budget increase.
Okay.
Councilmember Kritzer.
Well, this is a really interesting agreement, and great to be able to leverage some public-private partnership continued after actually getting the infrastructure in there. So I'm actually glad to see that around the maintenance and appreciative that we can build that out. One question on the easement piece. So are they just, as you noted, they are going to be giving us a certain amount of easement to be for areas that cross over Microsoft's owned land. Is that something that we have to pay them for, or are they just providing that easement for access?
That's part of the agreement. There is no cost involved for that grant of easement.
Okay,
Yep.
great. And then I'm curious, in the agreement, and you mentioned briefly about some of the additional features that Microsoft was going to have on the bridge that they'll be responsible for maintaining. Can you speak a little more to those?
It's particularly in the canopy itself. It's a material called Fabritech, and I believe they have exclusive contract with them to work through them where the city doesn't on there. And it's, I believe it comes from Texas is where it's shipped up. So it's a niche proprietary thing that they wanted to take burden. And I think, Mike, do you have any additional thing about the Fabritech that you can provide?
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. The whole idea behind it is Microsoft is responsible for those things that we call enhanced elements. So whether it's the canopy fabric or the landscaping or the waterproofing and the planter walls, the irrigation, all those things that you wouldn't normally put on a bridge, they are responsible for the cost of it. And Aaron's correct, the city will be responsible for getting the work done, but the bill will send a bill to Microsoft.
And there was a technology as well that was referenced that's going to be on the city or on the bridge as well?
I think that's more of just the naming of the bridge.
No, there was, I don't have it in front of me, so I can follow up with you to ask about it, but I was curious about it. Anyway, it's all right, I can follow up on that, thanks.
This will, once it gets open and the landscaping matures, I mean, it's going to be a great feature in that area for the public to access, because it is going to feel like you're walking through a linear park.
Yeah, actually, that was my last question was, will we have to wait until the light rail opens to be able to access this, or will it be able to open before then?
So right now, we can't access the bridge until the west landing is completed on the Microsoft campus side. But once that is completed, they will convey the bridge to us, and we should be able to open it before the light rail opens.
Great.
Yep.
I'm going to hop in with my questions, and then we'll go to Mr. Carson. I wanted to ask another pretty pointed question about the fabric. It is Microsoft's responsibility. This is a unique fabric and an exclusive situation, so the agreement expects the fabric to last for 25 years. That's a long time for a company. So does the agreement continue to put the burden on Microsoft if, say, the fabricator goes out of business in the next 25 years?
The onus would be on Microsoft on that particular item there.
Because it's theirs to replace no matter.
Correct.
Oops. Okay, great, thank you. Mr. Carson.
Oh, so on this tech canopy that they have, so my understanding is each canopy is actually not the same. They're all unique because of how they're installed on the bridge, and like the actual shape of them is different depending on where they are. So that, at least that's what we were told back when it was being proposed, that they're not just how many ever of them, they're not just the same exact piece of thing. So if one gets damaged, it's got to be specifically manufactured for the canopy that it is, so.
Yeah, the canopy sizes do vary, and so those panels of fabric would need to be custom made for that panel.
Thank you for your patience, Deputy Director, as it, is stated multiple times, what is the entity's obligation? But, we wouldn't be doing our due diligence without. Are there other questions or comments from the council? It looks like you may end up with a follow-up question from Councilmember Kritzer as she scrolls through, but for the moment, are there any objections to this item going to consent on the 18th? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and put it there, and you may get a follow-up question or two, and I hope we get an invitation to the ribbon cutting because I'm so excited to see this come to fruition and open up for our residents, so very excited. Thank you.
Thanks.
The final item tonight, item number 8, is award bid to Watson Asphalt Paving Company Incorporated of Redmond for the 2023 pavement repairs project in the amount of $428,448.
Yes, this is part of our ongoing pavement repair program. This is going to fix 3,140 feet of asphalt on Northeast 76 and 185th Avenue Northeast. Currently, that stretch of road has a pavement condition index of 42, which places it in the poor category. Once this project is complete, that should raise it up to beyond 70, which places it into the good class and gives us another functional operations for 15 to 20 years with proper maintenance. So the budget, the pavement repair program budget for 23-24 was $935,000. The engineering estimate and the bid, or I should say the bid for this, came in below the engineering estimate of $472,000. So we're able to save some money on that. The balance difference in this program of about $425,000 will be used and spent throughout the remainder of 2023 and 2024, mostly on our, what we call our slurry seals program. That's where we go out and put a seal on cracks in the road, which actually will help extend pavement for usually about 5 to 10 years, depending. So seeking approval to go on consent on, July 18th.
Thank you. Are there questions from the council? Councilmember Carson.
Just real quick, so does their proximity probably inform why their bid was substantially lower than, because they're in Redmond?
Lakeside was our second bidder, and I don't know, maybe they trade off year upon year, but we were pretty happy considering the past couple years, a lot of these pavement bids coming in over. So This was a good sign.
Good, great, thanks.
Councilmember Fields.
Thanks. Director Burke, wondering, as you move forward with this very large need to make our roads better that you described to us, or somebody described to us many months ago, it wasn't you, it was your predecessor. What is this criteria where first is going to be those really poor ratings, or are we looking for high traffic areas, or what is sort of the formula that you are, not in detail, but just a sense of how how your department is looking at what's first, what's second, what's third, as far as the road upgrades?
So that's a great question. In the past, they've taken a look at the pavement condition index. So what sections of road have deteriorated or need immediate replacement? And then they also combine that criteria with taking a look at traffic volumes. So high yield, high use streets that are failing tend to score higher for replacement or immediate or stopgap repairs, like in slurry seal, over something that is fairly poor but low use. One of the things, council member, that we are going to be taking a look at, especially with the transportation benefit district and influx of additional dollars, is how can we better leverage our repair dollars with other capital projects that we're doing to take a look at our streets holistically for repair. So that would not only be taking a look at what's failing, what's the volume, but where else do we have projects in place that we can leverage with bicycle safety and pedestrian mobility and movement. So we're going to be working in conjunction with our transportation planning folks and our transportation operations and safety engineering folks to begin to look at expanding that criteria so we can cover more areas.
And I completely appreciate that. And I would disagree that my question was good. The intent of my question was good, but it was poorly constructed. Your answer was immaculate, though, so thank you.
That sounds like an awesome point to end the meeting on. So are there any objections to this item going to consent on the 18th? Wonderful. We will see this item on consent. And having concluded the items for today, we are now adjourned. Thank you.